Morning all. I'd just like to go over Magnus Carlsen's games in the Amber tournament, just a brief overview. I hope you enjoy this. I'm not going to use chess-based clients. I'm not going to do one game a video. I'm just going to go over to try and pick up some ideas, maybe for my own games, but if you like the commentary, you like the commentary. It's not really designed for entertainment or instructional purposes. But if you do get instruction out of it, that's great. I'm just going to go over his games. It was 25 minutes per player, and I think 10 seconds added per move. So this was in round 1 against Nakamura. So Slav defense, and he plays e3 actually. He shuts in his bishop. So this is an interesting idea, to shut in the bishop, just to protect c4, no gambit or anything. And then a6, which I think has been popular recently. So queen c2, not developing any of these guys yet. Okay, and now d takes, so a4's clamped down on b5 instead of the routine capturing, as then might be b5, so maybe he wants to keep this bishop locked in. If b5 then takes, then knight b5. So c5, you know, black's trying to get an active game anyway. Hikaru. And now black's got an isolated queen pawn to play against. So was this kind of dangerous for Magnus? The blockade's kind of lifted with this next move, which picks up a bishop, but it means, you know, there's more fluidity to white's centre here, with potentials for d5. And also, of course, the h7 pawn isn't free, but is the bishop going to be trapped? So he actually takes that and does a bishop sack now. So was Hikaru playing with fire here to allow this? He is a piece up, but there's a lot of pawns already. It's 3 pawns for black. Let's try and count pawns properly today rather than yesterday's blitz game. And there's 6 pawns for white. So that means plus 3 pawns, but for a whole piece, is it worth it? A knight against the 2 bishops, basically. So defending against a mate threat. Now, rook to c7 looks dangerous in some lines. For example, queen f6 might be useful to decoy the queen. So queen h7 hits h2 and protects the rook, of course. So queen g3 protecting h2 against the mate. So king e8. It gets a bit crazy. I thought this game was a bit strange with the king in the centre. It's very, very tactical. So of course you want to open up the lines against the king. So this next move looks logical. d5 to try and strip open the e file. Black doesn't really want to give up a whole rook. He'll just be material down with queen h2. So there's nothing clear for black to do, and his development's a bit inhibited by these 2 guys at the moment. So bishop d6, rook e1. So the rooks, I mean, everything's working optimally here. The queen's kind of having to defend h2, but it's also useful on the g file. The rooks on the c and e lines look quite dangerous. So Hikaru's trying to sort of get out of it. So h3 means the queen's now a bit freer to move around now without babysitting h2. So giving up the dark squared bishop. Dark squares are all a bit weaker now. Now there might be a threat of rook e6 here. This looks kind of dangerous with a rook c7 coming in. So rook g6 defends against rook e6. And now another pawn bites the dust. So we're plus 4 pawns now. 3, 4, 5, 6, only 2. Plus 4 pawns for an entire rook, though. Sorry, an entire bishop, just the bishop. But now an exchange sacrifice, which means it's an entire rook. Rook takes c6. This gets yet another pawn, because now queen c6 is threatened. As well as, I guess, maybe something else here, because there's a pin here. Maybe rook g5, but then rook g7, I'm not sure. But Hikaru gave up another pawn with queen g7. So if he defended rook with rook c8, that's the question. I'm not entirely sure. If we put that in as a different variation, see rook g5, there might be rook g7 here. Oh, just take, and then rook g8, the pawn stopping king d7. So that was, black's tied in knots then. If rook g5 really is a threat, this pawn's like dislocating black's defensive task. So that's why maybe. Okay, so go back to the main line here. We'll go back to the main line. So losing another pawn, so it's so many pawns. have bitten the dust for being a rook down. Now rook e3. So white's keeping an eye on g2, but the rook. Why rook e3? I wonder if it can just swing to d3. That rook was on pre, and now queen c5, check again. Not minding rook g2, hitting that rook on b6. So the king just goes here. So there's no queen g4, there's no queen b2. The queen's also attacking and defending here from b6. Crazy game, really. Now check, check, and here Hikaru gave it up. I wonder if we oh sorry, not quite here. He played there, check. Now he gave up here. Well, if king e7, rook d7 just wins the queen, I think that's too much. And if king, well, it looks like slaughter time anyway. I think this looks all over. Can't quite concretely see how though, but at this very moment, maybe just queen takes. As here with the queen being blocked by the king, maybe just queen takes rook. Okay, let's move on to the next game. So I hope you got something out of that. I'm just quickly going over the games, basically, just looking at the strategies and picking up maybe a few things. So as in round 2, so Magnus was playing black. Let's flip the board against Gashimov, who I've seen at Gibraltar. A very dangerous player, got into the 2700 club a few years back, maybe 2 years back, quite new I think, quite a young player. But now believe it or not, Magnus must be looking at the YouTube channel, because what does he play here? He plays my favourite burn variation with d takes e4, and he allows the double pawns here, the Morozevich line in particular. No kidding. Unbelievable. But instead of b6, he strikes out now immediately with f5 and now c5. This is not something I've tried before. This is what I mean. I'm picking up some ideas sometimes from these games which could be used in blitz. So this against knight f3, that's interesting. I mean, maybe knight f3 looks natural. So this looks interesting. Quite a forceful move, f5 followed by c5, immediately striking at the dark squares, basically trying to play on this trump card bishop, because okay, that weakens e5, but c5 is immediately trying to bite against e5 and d4, trying to use maybe this trump card. So it's a very interesting idea, and it seems Magnus gets a good position at the opening, even though this looks a little bit horrendous here. This is an interesting pawn sack, but I'm not really sure. You know, Magnus is holding up f5 and d5 for the moment. So where is the compensation here for white? Because there's potential g-file still, although the pawns are sliced. So Gashim's going immediately for f5 maybe, or f7. So Magnus is potentially giving out f5, but there's check. Now finally f5 is taken, but you know he's not doing too badly here. Okay, f7 and e7 are under fire, so he's giving yet another pawn back. So the pawn situation has been totally restored actually, 5 pawns each. So we have this endgame, which black has the dark square bishop. So does he try and he makes that count somehow? Just outplays Gashimov in this endgame. So he's stretching out on the queen side, isolated pawns, and a2 pawn to pick on. Now he's bringing up his pawns, and he's using his bishop to herd the pawns a little bit. c3 is now a target. And then we have a 2-0 on the queen side against a 2-0 on the king side. But black's pawns may be more significant. The bishop's holding up more successfully maybe than the knight, I guess. He just won a rook, and now these pawns are relentless with the king, so the bishop's able to stop white's pawns, and this king can herd that pawn. So an endgame won. But the opening here was very interesting, food for thought, because especially I played the burn variation, as you know. So to just do this is a bit of a shock to see f5 and c5. Very interesting, very, very interesting. So let's go on to game 3 against Aronian. This looks like a hard-fought draw against Aronian, who's 2808. So Magnus playing a Catalan system, and solid Slav structure again. So he takes on d5, Rook a7 looks a bit artificial, doesn't it? Rook a7, but I guess it's logical for b5 later. And what was there an alternative there? Why couldn't black? If b5 then a4, so it's not committing black to b5 immediately. In fact, does black want to play b5 immediately? He just wants to protect the b7 pawn in a minimalist way, so it did the job. Then it goes back. There's no need for b5. In fact, he wants a5. So he's giving up b7 because that, you know, get rook b8 and rook b2. Also, yeah. Also, this is another pawn sack here implied. There's two pawn sacks implied because d5 and b5 are hit with queen b3. So giving up d5. So black's got a little bit of counterplay here. Whoa! What is going on here? Oh! The queen doesn't retreat. It attacks the black queen. Okay. And then white's getting 2 pieces for the rook. Sorry, black's getting 2 pieces of rook. 4 bits, 3 bits. 2 bits for the rook. We've got a major imbalance of material. So how does this peter out? So it seems, I don't know, tricky for both sides. Just following the flow here, basically. Following the flow. So black's got dangerous a pawn maybe. But then Magnus picked up 2 pieces for the rook. Wasn't there this time trouble or something? 2 pieces for the rook, and we reached then a sort of equalish rook and pawn ending. Interesting. Too complicated, that one. Let's move swiftly on. So game 4, Giri against Carlsen. Flip the board. So e6. Magnus is obviously following the Bronstein Botvinnik match, which I've been covering, where they were playing e6 to invite a French defence, or we'll just go into the Dutch. So bishop b4. Now this is called the kangaroo defence. E0-0. Why is it called the kangaroo? I wonder. There's a pouch somewhere or something. So f5. So now we have maybe black playing for e5 or Dutch stonewall. But black is the one that's got rid of his own dark square bishop. So that's a bit strange. You see, again, Magnus is following, chess cube strategies here, not worrying about the dark squares too much. Just making sure he's got this stonewall set up, sorting out his light square bishop, his queen's bishop, liberating with c5. I mean, it all looks kind of, natural stuff. He's want to snag the pawn there, and now it's just technique in the endgame to win this endgame, a pawn up, of course. Actually, what was happening here with knight e5? Why was in this position knight e5 not possible? Maybe a6 actually wins material. A6, rook moves, knight takes e5. Okay. So Magnus is all in control of this position, I guess, and it's just technique, I guess. A pawn up on the queen side somehow. Lovely deflection here to simplify, get the rooks off. So he gets the rooks off. This knight ending, grinds, wins another pawn, 2 passed pawns, and then he sort of herds them to victory. Okay, interesting. Kangaroo. Okay, let's go back and look at. We've seen the Ivanchuk game anyway in more detail on ChessBase client. Let's look at it again. So Ivanchuk crushed Magnus because this early queen g4. If you have a look at that previous video, I think a3 would have stabilised the centre. So this was Magnus's disaster game in the tournament. But looking in context, Magnus is doing fantastically well. He's leading the tournament now again. I don't know if he was earlier actually, but he's leading the tournament at the moment. This was just his disaster game where he didn't manage to sort of develop properly, and king in the centre and he got mated. But okay, we've seen the details of that on the previous videos. So let's not comment on that too much here. So in round 6 he beat Karjakin, another youngster, 2700 club, 2776 in fact. Okay, so a kind of, is it Roy Lopez? Yes, bishop b5 Royal Lepez. And now d3, avoiding the martial line, so d3. a4, anti-martial system. Bishop a2. So it's getting that centre with c3 and d4 anyway in the classical style. Not minding trading off the knight on the rim, which is a bit dim. Black conceding the tension in the centre, maybe it's double pawns now, but is this any good? So rook c1, there's a bit of ugliness here with white's pawn structure. f4 might be potentially weak, the knight might be ready to lurk on f4. So how does Magnus handle this f4 issue? e5, the dynamics here. Okay, it's the dynamics versus the ugliness. Dynamically, white's got a few trump cards here. So he's getting the queens off now with queen g4. He's undoubling his pawns after queen g4. Maybe this queen g5 wasn't so hot, but it takes rook e5, hitting queen and knight. Maybe the knight's a bit of a target. Okay, so undoubling the pawns. There's a lot of pressure on black. The rook's kind of not as active as white's rooks. This bishop's kind of dangerous on f7 anyway. Now there's an outside past a pawn, which Magnus is quite good with, like he's going against short at the London Classic. So past a pawn, but now this g pawn is also dangerous. This pin after this h5. I wonder about this h5. It just g5 g6 looks really dangerous. In fact, it's used now, and then black resigns. Strange, isn't it? This, I don't know, knight c5. We just take first on f7, and then rook c4, just pinning the knight. If knight c5, it looks horrendous with that g6, but it was invited with h5. Strange stuff. Why was h5 invited here? I guess black wanted a hole for the king, and if he's not careful, if g6, don't know, g6, maybe rook e7 is good, and an a7. So that's a remarkable win, really. I don't know if a lot of this is time pressure, because it is a blitz. I mean, it's kind of rapid. It is rapid. So let's have a look at that again. Kind of Royal Lepez. Something strange happened in it. Dynamics. White allowed the double pawns. Black conceded the tension in the centre, so e5 became a sort of threat. But the queen g4 inviting the exchange of queens back, and then rook c6 hitting two pawns. So black's careful to protect e5 now. e5 still on. At the moment, temporarily black was a pawn up here, but e5 is on. It can't be easily protected. So it's actually just given up here with e4. But still black's in major trouble. Okay, so that was so let's look at round 7 just to catch up now to the final round. So he beats Vladimir. How did he do that? This is a bit of a strange game out, so I was looking at a little bit earlier just to get a grip, a little bit of a grip on it, but I don't know, Vladimir seemed to weaken his king side later. He plays a temporary pawn stack in the style of Botvinnik against Bronstein. Temporary pawn stack on d5 here. Magnus isn't too worried about this. Okay, he can't ever take again, and he's potentially white's building up some pressure now, you know, with knight f4 to get a grip on d5. But Magnus wasn't too worried by this. He just supports d5 and supports it again with his rook now. And this provokes a weakness actually, just g4, because this is a biting point later for black playing f5, as we're about to see. And it's very powerful actually, because Magnus is also prepared to give up his a pawn very soon. Plays g5 fixing against white playing g5 first, and now that's a fixed target for black playing f5 later, believe it or not. So we see here this move, giving up a6 just to play f5 with the white king on f1. It looks, why did the white king go to f1? That's another strange question here. Why on earth would king f1 be played? Odd game, isn't it? So a6 is given up, and then f5 with the king on f1 looks even worse. and it looks as though, yeah, obvious pressure, and there's rook e3 even as a tactic now, because of that pawn being pinned. Now queen f6 threatening and mate in 1. Now in this final position, maybe it was just huge time pressure, but you know, white resigned here, but knight g4 looks devastating anyway, with the idea, you know, maybe just knight rook e2 and knight f2, or lots of things after knight g4. It's all falling to bits. Bishop's hopeless here, blocked in by its own pawn. So I thought that was a bit of a crush actually, this round 7 game, and it's kind of, I don't know, white played a temporary pawn sack, which didn't really seem to do much. This was interesting though, this knight e4. What was the point of knight e4? Just to exchange off this knight. I suppose it makes this bishop able to come to f6 later. So it relieves black game to get these exchanges. And then d5's not a major problem, and also e5's got access to. But the g5 idea, and not tempted for like b5, so letting white clamp down in fact on b5. So Magnus is just playing on the king side now. Just gives up a6, goes for the king. Strange. They're not playing at their strength for like long games and in players, so it's just rapid. Anyway, I just thought I'd catch up there. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe in a few more rounds we'll just look at the other games, Magnus, just briefly. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.